Hello and welcome to my channel where I like to get my hands on all kinds of projects. This nightstand we're looking at, I pulled out of my neighbor's trash. After storing this in my garage for a while, I finally pulled it out and I'm ready to work on it. Looking this over, there's not too many dings or nicks deep in the wood. Obviously the paint is failing. I think they only put one coat of, it looks like chalk paint or something on this. So I'm definitely going to be painting over these areas. Don't want to spend much time stripping. This doesn't seem like a super fancy piece, like high quality wood. Maybe it's nice, but I'm wanting to do something with green paint. So I do want some wood tones in here. So just looking this over, I got to clean this up. Now on the bottom side, because I stored this stamp in my garage, I think I got this mold. So that's what we first need to address. And usually what I do with mold is I hit it with vinegar or bleach. This time I'm using vinegar. I'm going to try to stay away from bleach and go a little more natural. And I use sunshine. So this puppy sat out in the sun as much as I could get it. Granted, I filmed this in October, I believe, and the sun just doesn't come out for very long then. So as much as I could, I got it lying out in the sun to just kill this mold. And then I need to clean it. So I'm going to shop vac all the junk off of it, and then I need to wipe it down. To clean this, I like to use like a degreaser, like Simple Green, but I'm out of it. So I'm just going to use soap and water. And then after I let it sit and dry, I did a wet towel to just kind of get any soap residue off. I did have a piece recently that I did that'll be another video that I did not clean well, and then I painted it and then it bubbled up underneath. So you definitely want to clean your piece really good. I'll add here that I prefer to take my hardware off before I clean, so that if there's any gunk underneath the hardware, I make sure that gets cleaned up before I proceed onto priming, sanding, painting, any of that stuff. I decided I wanted to make this piece look a little more simple, so I wanted to take away some of the embellishments. If this makes you cringe, I apologize, but this I am keeping, and so I want to make it fit a little more of my style. And so to do that, I am just super rudimentary, nothing fancy here. I am keeping it, so I don't care if this turns out perfect. I just want it to look better than it does. So I'm just using a pen and a ruler, and I'm marking what I want to cut off. The sides of the base here are beveled, flowing out. I want them straight, so I'm just going to cut them off. For cuts like this, I just pull out my jigsaw. It's pretty simple, straightforward. After cutting one of the sides off, I realized, oopsie, it caused the edges to splinter pretty bad. So after I cut the center part out, that went with the grain and that was fine, but going against the grain, it can cause that splintering. So the way to help mitigate that is to put some painter's tape on and then redraw the line and then cut over that, which that made it splinter less, but I'm going to paint this part, so I'm not too concerned about it. I'll just fill that with wood putty and we will move on. Cutting the top little extra bumpies off was no problem. Again, that was with the grain. I tend to err on the side of cutting less. I can go back and cut more. I mean, obviously I try to cut right on the line, but you can always cut more. But you also want to make sure you cut it all off, because I was like, oh, there's a bump left. I'll just sand it. Oh my goodness, that took forever. So just try to cut all that needs cut off and just sand to smooth. Don't try to sand lumps off. I use 220 grit sandpaper to just sand the edges smooth, sand down the rough edges a little bit, just to make it pleasant. I want to strip the paint off of the top of this stand. The paint's very thin, so I'm not going to bother with stripper. I'm just going to sand it. I'm using a 220 grit sanding disc, and with some patience and endurance, this will be bare. I'm going to see and make sure that the top looks good, the wood looks good underneath, so that I can leave it. Obviously, it's a bummer if you go to all this work and then find out the wood underneath is not so great, but this looks promising. So once I got it sanded, I need to just clean it up and just wiped off the dust. And then I want to scuff sand the whole base because I want to paint it. But because this paint's thin and kind of already chipping, I want to make sure I knock anything loose off. And then always after doing a scuff sand, you want to wipe it clean with a wet rag just to get all that dust off so that you have a clean surface to start with when you're painting. Now it's time to fill holes. So there's a crack on the side here and some little scuffs. So I just need to fill those. And sometimes you go through and fill, and then you do a light sanding, 220 grit sandpaper, and it didn't quite fill the hole all the way. You want to go back and fill again, let it dry. The wood putty I have is it dries pretty quickly. So if you need to do a couple layers, it's okay. It's better to do a couple layers and do it right than just have it not look good. I sanded down the drawer front because I wanted to get what I'm guessing was the original stain off of it, see if I can get it to be a lighter color. And I just quickly sanded the sides of the drawer as well, just to kind of clean them up a little. And then it looks like I came back with another round of sanding, so I must have used 160 grit sandpaper the first time to get the paint off, and now a 220 grit to kind of finalize getting some of the black out of it and getting it as wood as I can before deciding how I want to stain this. I also had a little crack in here. My wood filler is supposed to be stainable, but it never really does. But that's okay. I actually decided to do a whitewash for this, so I think it will blend in okay. I want to change my drawer hardware. I don't want to put on what was on it before. So I'm going to plug the hole. It had the original hole and then two little spikes to hold it in place. So I'm patching all of that, and I'll sand those smooth with a 220 grit sandpaper. Hopefully the whitewash will cover what is left over, because I'm just going to put a knob on this. But again, I'm keeping it so it doesn't have to be perfect. If I was selling this, I would not settle for putting a knob where you could see the white wood filler, because it just doesn't look great. It's okay, but it doesn't look great. So I wouldn't do this if I was selling it, but I'll do it because I'm keeping it. Before painting, I'm going through one last time and wiping everything down. Usually when I work on projects, it's over multiple days, and so my pieces sit in the garage and get dusty or dirty. So I need to make sure that I wipe them down right before painting. If you're doing this back to back to back and your area is clean, you might be able to skip this part. But if you want a nice smooth coat of paint, having something clean is ideal. Because this base is black and I'm using a lighter green paint, I decided I'm going to put a coat of primer so that I can only use 2 coats of paint instead of needing 3 to cover the black well. And then after the primer, it's ideal to take a high grit sandpaper like 220 or even up to 400 and just lightly sand off any bumps or things that might have fallen into the paint to get a nice smooth finish before you go ahead and paint. I often forget that step, but I think it's very helpful to guarantee a more smooth finish. I'm doing a whitewash for the top and drawer front, and to do that, you just water down paint. So I'm doing about 1 part water to 1 part paint. I'm using Fusion Minerals Raw Silk. It's like a creamy white color. And once I have that well mixed up, it's really simple to do a whitewash. You brush it on, as thick as you want or thin. You can always do another coat, so it's better to go thin than thick. But once you brush it all on to your piece with a lint-free rag, you will wipe it off. And you can wipe off how much or how little you want until it's the, depth of color you want. If you want more wood grains, you're going to do a lighter whitewash. If you want a more of a colored wood, you're going to do a thicker whitewash. I don't think I got all of the black paint out of the wood, so it's a little darker than I wanted, so I went ahead and did a second whitewash on both the top and the drawer front to get it a little more white than the orange, yellowy, and black. I put 2 very thin coats of this beautiful green color on the piece, and once that was good and dry, it's Fusion Mineral paint, so it's like a chalk paint, And it has a built-in top coat, but I really don't like the chalky feel, so I went ahead and used their clear wax, and I did 1 coat of clear wax on the top and sides, the whole piece, the whole thing, drawer front, just not the insides of the drawer, but the whole piece got a layer of clear wax, which you buff it on with this brush, and I let it sit for about 30 minutes, and then I come back and I buffed it with a lint-free rag, and just to try to get it a little shine on it, and I really like how it deepens the color of the paint. And once that was set, we're ready to put on the hardware and stage this piece. Because this already had a single hole for the knob that was on before, I didn't bother with measuring. I just re-drilled a hole in the center to the size of my screw and went with that space, which I'm glad I filled the hole because my screw was smaller than the hole that was there originally. Okay, if you ever come across this situation where my bolt for the knob, because I'm reusing one I already had, was too long, and I went to the hardware store and I couldn't find a bolt that was the right length, and the guy there suggested, well, just get a couple washers if it's like a fraction of an inch difference, and put a couple washers on here, and that will make up for the space needed so that it'll be tight. Because when you put the bolt onto these knobs, they only screw in so far into the handle, and you need to have it screw in all the way till it's tight on the wood, and when it's too long, it's going to be loose and not hold. So it took 3 washers in total to get this tight. I was really excited they had that solution, because cutting a fraction of an inch off of a bolt, or when you don't have a vise of any type to hold that screw, is a real pain in the butt. You can ask me why. I know. I've done it before. So this was an exciting solution. If you come across that, just get a couple washers. I love the way this turned out. Let's look real quick at what we started with, and I will show you the grand reveal. This is beautiful. I'm so excited to have this in my home. I hope you've enjoyed this reveal, and I will catch you in my next video.